Hi, everyone. You can hear me right?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we will continue on chapter 16.
Professor?
Yeah.
Could you go quickly over the two first slides?
Yeah, sure. So
Thank you.
if I can share my screen. So, oops. Two first slides, you mean this one, for instance?
Yeah.
Yes, I can quickly say what I said last time. So basic function of government. Sometimes if you're in a poli-sci class, you may say Hegelian function of government is really to have a monopoly in violence and make sure that so the country doesn't get invaded, people don't attack each other, and then for that you need money, so you have the exclusive monopoly of collecting taxes on your territory. So that's basically it. And here what I was saying is the fact that it's not like it's an invention that had to appear and that there was a long period without it. It's just that if you have a bunch of people living in a territory, then as soon as somebody is stronger than the other and they like power, then they're just going to say, okay, now I'm the boss in town and you pay me, otherwise you're going to get in trouble. And by the way, of course, I'm going to defend you, but mostly I'm going to defend the fact that I'm still the leader around here. So this is what I was saying here. So in medieval time, you had local rulers or warriors, and you had to pledge allegiance to them. And in modern time, you would say that the state is the end product. It's so kings like the King of England or the King of France were just the last sovereign of that were able to basically take over all the country. So now it's changed. It's the society that that govern itself in democracies, but still the basic function of having this exclusive monopoly on power, that's still maintained. All right. So you may have heard about this person, maybe not, but if you're in economics, I hope it rings a bell. Adam Smith. So they say it's the founder of British classical economics, but really it's oftentimes just called a founder of economics. By no means mean that it's the first person ever to write things that were relevant for economics, but you would say he's the most famous one. And he wrote about many things. So he's often touted as the person who said, "Oh, it's from everybody's willingness to improve their own income that societies prospers, basically." But he wrote about many things, about the theory of moral sentiments, and is has many books. So he covers many topics. He wasn't thinking he would write about economics per se, but he was just writing about how so the wealth of nation is what make nations wealthy in general. So and many aspects are part of them. So here is writing about the duty of the sovereign. So that's basically it, protecting society against the violence of invaders and protecting every member of society from other members. Why? Because that's the way to make sure that that the society works well. So I could have add two things here. yeah, so protecting citizen. So what I'm writing here is that the goal of protecting citizens against each other, it's not purely benevolent one. If they're doing this, then they don't have to spend a lot of effort and energy building weapon and defending themselves. If they can outsource protection to the ruler, and that means that so they have better economic activity, and it's a bigger tax pool for the sovereign. So it means that even nowadays, you would say a dictator has a very big incentive of making sure that society works well, that there's yeah, so everybody likes each other, because if it works well, then the state is powerful and he gets to tax a lot of people. Yeah, so that's the basic function of government. Yeah. All right. One other, and by the way, this is a, protection, as we're going to see, is what we would call a public good. And these are goods that basically are not going to come about by themselves. It's not like you, if there's one ruler that governs everybody, then this protection good is good for everyone. So if it's safe for my neighbor, then it means that the street is also safe for me, for instance. All right. So basic function of government. One other is define and enforce property rights. So again, that's a way to ensure that people know if they start working, if they start building some assets, building a firm, that they can enjoy the fruits of this effort. Otherwise, what would they do? They wouldn't do anything. Yes, to do that, they must have clear definitions of and enforcement of the rights and obligation of institutions such as corporation, religious organization, non-profit enterprises, and it must be predictable. So one thing that you shouldn't do is change things post hoc. So say, oh, by the way, I realized that I think the tax rate should not be 10, should be 20. So for all the works that you've done in the last 2 years, now you owe me money. So that doesn't work that way, or shouldn't work that way. So things must be stable so that the economic agent can foresee what they want to do as well as possible. Yeah, so of course, in complex society, it's complicated. Yeah, and countries whose government are not good at doing this don't prosper economically. So one example I would say I would give for now is troubling example, I would say. I don't know if troubling is the right example, is the right word, but China. Why do I say that? Well, because in the thousands, China became extremely wealthy, and there were a lot of new, very powerful millionaires, and even so a lot of millionaires in China. So. Became much more wealthy. And a new millionaire class appeared. But nowadays, so yeah, the state has been not so happy with how well they do, and yeah, there's been institutional uncertainty surrounding new large firms, and yeah, yeah, there's an uncertainty. Yeah. So, for instance, Jack Ma. So he was, he was going to become the wealthiest person in China, and now he sort of disappeared for a while, and now his firm, so Alibaba. And now it's like lost half its value since a few years ago. Yeah. So what's the result for that? Well, back in the days, if you were some foreigner, say American or Canadian, and you thought, oh, well, I want to make money, China looked good because it's a great pool of potential consumers and lots of wealth. But if you have a hard time with seeing how the institutions are going to work, and making sure that once you earn something, it's not just taken away from you, then what do? You're really unsure if you should invest. And yeah, so nowadays things are not as good as they look, and it might so for somebody like Xi Jinping, it might look like a good strategy short term. Oh, we're going to assert the power of the state, but long term it means that you don't know whether China is going to really flourish as an economic country or not. So that's why these things are super important. All right. So I don't want to dig too deep into this. I'm not a specialist in China, but this is more or less incontroversial, I would say. All right. So the case of free market. So why do we care about free market a lot? Well, there are many reasons we should. First one is based on allocative efficiency. So why did so many countries in the 20th century that were planned economies or communist eventually, like Russia or China or even Cuba, turn more or less progressively in market economies? Well, there are many reasons for that, but yeah, two main reasons, you would say. First of all is allocation. So what does it mean? Well, actually, I think we have a slide on that later on. So this is yeah, so basically this is just the introduction. So if markets are perfectly competitive and governments allow prices to be determined by supply and demand, so basically if I get my nice supply and demand in perfect competition with no tax, no quota, no price floor, no price ceiling, then I would get that price equal marginal cost. And it's the perfect situation where allocation is optimal and we get marginal cost equal that's not a good idea. Yeah, marginal benefit equals price equals marginal cost. So that's the best. Is that always the case? Well, no. So this is in a sort of idealized world. So yeah. In reality, we have many market imperfection. Like imperfect competition, we're going to see. Yeah, information asymmetries. We're going to see what this is. Externalities. We're going to see what this is. Public good. Etc. So this, if you take just this class and you stop now, for now, you see, oh, well, the best thing we can do is have no taxes and let the market do its thing. Well, if you continue in economics, you're going to learn everything that makes the discipline interesting. Well, we have already seen in the last 3 or 4 classes that if you have imperfect competition, then you don't get marginal benefit equals marginal cost, because there's a markup that monopolies or oligopolies firms charge. But there are also many other problems that just are facts of the world that we have to deal with in some ways to make the... And by the way, Adam Smith was perfectly aware of these things. So he was discussing about the fact that sovereign also needed to collect taxes to finance big projects that couldn't be profitable for a single individual, like public goods, like defense, for instance. So even Adam Smith was perfectly aware of the problem of free markets. Okay. Okay, so this is it. So the formal defense against free market based on the 3 central arguments. So first, markets provide automatic coordinations of the action of decentralized decision makers. What does that mean? It means that markets give a lot, like synthesize a lot of information for people to use in order to choose what to do. So what this means is, prices, all the information to choose what to produce, what to buy, etc. So it allows people to coordinate against among each other. Then free markets are also an environment in which you so this is this with prices, you know what you should produce or buy, but then should you do it or not? Well, the fact is, in free markets, if you don't do anything, well, in Canada, you're going to maybe have help from the state, but if it were perfectly competitive economy with no help from the government or anybody, then if you don't do anything and you just sit there, you're on your own and nobody gives you anything, then you just starve. So that's the thing that happens in markets too, is at some point we are, that's something that everybody has to do, is to get motivation from themselves to consume and to buy stuff. So this has become a central assumption of basically all economic models. So people act so as to maximize their own utility. So they're by managing their firm or working, what they intend to do is maximize profit, maximize income, and then buy stuff. So that there's this this motivational aspect to it. And then there's this decentralization of economic power. Yes, sort of in free markets, yes, but as we can see with firms like Amazon, for instance, yes, so in many sectors with high fixed costs, or many sectors with big network effects, then the end product is oftentimes concentration. So yes, in perfectly markets in practice. There can be economic concentration. All right, so this is
can you go back to the last slide?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, and while you copy this, let me show you something that I had prepared for the beginning of the class, but that is an illustrative point about all of this. So here it is. So somebody knows where this is?
North Korea.
Yes, exactly. Well, actually, it's South Korea here and North Korea there. And this is at night. So what happened there? Well, I'm not going to claim that without the war or anything, then the two would be the same, because I mean, you can split a country like Canada in two, and in the north, you're going to not see a lot of lights, because in Bay James or in Ungava, there are not a lot of people that live there, while in Montreal, a lot of people live there. But what you can really see is this juncture there. That's the limit between South Korea and North Korea. And what's the big difference between here and here? Well, the big difference is the government. Here, it's a planned economy where the states decide what citizens have to do. And thank God for Kim Jong-un, the dear leader, to protect them and make them prosperous. And this is the South, which is a market-based economy. And so it's just striking. Yeah, again, I'm not claiming it. These two would be the same without that, but it's very hard to get something that's closer to a perfect experiment. So we had a unified country before. Now there's a war, and they divide, and they have a different economic system, and this is what you get. So this is really a visual representation of what comes around when you don't have sound economic policies. All right, back to that. Okay, so what automatic coordination? So what do we mean that markets can adjust quickly to change? So if I'm say I'm a firm, I'm a firm manager. All I care about is the price of inputs and the market price for my output. The rest I don't. So then with just these two things, with two sources, I can take the best decision. Make or take the decision. Yeah, anyways, about production. So in a planned economy, so this is in free market. In a planned economy, so the central authority must know everything about quantities and technologies. Yeah, quantities, technology, and taste. Preferences. In the country to manage enemy. Well, so that's the big difference here. Everybody, so if I'm making nails, I know, okay, this is the price of steel, this is how I can sell my nails, so I'm going to just worry about this, and the rest, everything is automatic in the economy. Whereas if you're in a centralized economy, then you have to basically do everything for everybody. You have to claim that you know what everybody needs, how everything is produced, and what everybody likes. So you decide, okay, people like one type of car, the Lada, and that's it. They're all going to buy this, and they don't need anything else that's produced in the West. And this is, and we know exactly how it has to be built. It needs this much steel, this much, or maybe they didn't even use steel in the Lada. And you can see that's crazily complicated, and that's one of the reasons why in the later stages in USSR, people claim that part of why the system didn't work is that it's just so hard to adapt to the modern world with modern technologies and modern ways of doing things, if you need to plan everything. Because you need to say, oh, I'm going to need these components there and these components there. So it becomes extremely difficult. So one example of these difficulties is exploding televisions in USSR. I don't know if I've thought about it, but yeah, very quickly. So yeah, they had a lot of fires in houses because of exploding televisions. Just because sometimes they run out of run out of screws and they had to use nails, or run out of one component and they had to use some other component. So they couldn't plan, everybody couldn't plan well for their own firm how to produce their own television. So they had to do with what they had. And the end result was very poor quality. I'm not saying that no television in the West ever exploded, but that's, yeah. And here, example of this is right now, there's a temporary labor shortage in 2021. And what are we seeing in many sectors? Can somebody guess? I'm saying that prices are everything that's needed to allocate resources. Now, what we see is we have a lack of resource. So how should price adjust if they can?
The wages are gonna get higher?
Yes, exactly. So in many sectors, so yeah, wages are increasing everywhere because they lack workers. So they say, so every time you hear this on the news, you hear some entrepreneur or somebody from the Economic Council say, oh, there's I can't find workers. What you have to understand is the old sentence is, I can't find workers at the low wage rate I'm willing to pay them. So you can find workers. It's just that you have to post a higher wage, and people are going to come to work for your firm. It's just right now, if you cannot find workers, it's because you don't compensate them with good enough work conditions. But if you give them a good wage, then they're going to come. So the only way to have a permanent labor shortage or a permanent labor excess is to have price controls. So like if you can have you can have excess, you can have, say, unemployment if you set the minimum wage very high, for instance. But so when you hear labor shortage, always say temporary or transitory, because it's if there's no law that prevents wages from adjusting, then they're going to adjust. And this economists are not that good at making predictions, but I would predict that labor shortages are not something that you're going to see forever. You're going to see them for a while, but eventually things should go back to a equilibrium. That said, there's a lot of old people that are that are going on retirement. So it means that, yeah, there's a lot of work opportunities for a younger generation, you guys. But it's not, you shouldn't see a huge labor shortage for a while. It's just that we come out of COVID and now there are lots of jobs. All right. Wait a second. So the second big aspect is motivation. So in a market economy, individuals risk their time and money in the hope of earning profits. So for themselves, I should add. Or their family, for instance. Many fail, some succeed. So the market system works by trial and error to sort them out. So the result is that, in a way, the best firms are the ones that are going to succeed. Yeah. So that so if you contrast this with so in USSR again. By the way, for people who don't know, USSR is what Russia used to be. So I'm assuming that everybody knows, but just to be sure. So yeah. Just to be sure. Okay, so in contrast, in USSR, so if you produce, so you produce for the state. And so if you make a special effort today, you're not going to get a special reward about it. It's everybody for everybody else. So it's a very selfless system, but it also means that eventually, if you lose faith in the system or the Soviet experiment or the revolution, then you just decide, oh, I'm not going to make an effort because I don't care anymore. And yeah, and then how do you motivate yourself? Well, my motivation to teach you today is I want to have an income and not lose my job. So that's why I make an effort. But of course, it's my pleasure to talk to you. However, it would be nicer to talk to you in person rather than over the internet. But yeah, I have a lot of personal reasons to do it. So in USSR, then what you would need eventually is to have workers need production quotas. So it's just the law is you have to produce this quantity, otherwise you're in big trouble. And so yeah, so that's a way to motivate people is you're going to say that they might go to prison if they don't produce the right amount. So that's the hard thing to motivate people there. Yeah. They like. So that's a very crude way of saying it, but yeah, that's what it is. This I've already talked about this one. Problem. So this is everything that's good, quote unquote, about market economies. Now, what problems are there? Market failures. Also known as what's not so good about capitalism and market economies. Market power. So market power is inevitable because in many industries of scale, then eventually it becomes so expensive to start generating goods and distributing them that you cannot have 100 different firms that operate in this market. So we've seen examples of that. So example, I could say water distribution, telecommunication, even car manufacturers. So then what's the solution? Should you force the market to have many car manufacturers and many competing firms with water distribution? No, it's never going to work because it's just managing the piping system, managing all the satellites and all the, or electricity too. Yeah. Electricity distribution, all of this costs so much money that you have to manage them in some other ways. So usually what you do is you have very broad legal system. Yeah. Yeah, so solution. Now let's see here. To manage them, to manage competition, nationalization, of certain firms, for instance, Hydro-Québec. So here what they're saying is it's not always all that bad because oftentimes developing a new invention or a new product takes time. A big example of this is drugs. So developing a new drug is expensive. So in a way, the market power that comes with having invented this new thing is a way for them to make up the investment. So it doesn't mean actually that it's inefficient. It's just a way to pay for. There could be other ways to pay for them, but this is a good way of paying for innovation. Yeah, and yeah. So that's but so we've discussed this. So this is all about, yeah, I could just say it's monopolies. Oligopolies. So is this such a bad problem for capitalism or market economies? Not all that much. It still looks shocking to see huge firms like Amazon, or back in the days, the Carnegies and the big, the big firms in the early 20th century who control all the railroad systems or all the early electricity generation. But this is not the worst that the thing that worry most about economists. For economists, we try to manage this with we try to study it with industrial organization and manage it with these laws. But so the losses, the deadweight losses that they generate are not all that worrying. Yeah, the competition could be better, but it's not the worst. The two others that we're going to see are much worse. So one big one is what we call externalities. So what this is, it's an effect that's caused by some people trading with each other, or some economic activity, or some activity in which the adverse effect or the positive effect that are felt by a third party are not taken into account. So it can be a positive or negative externality. So what this is here, it's pollution from coal power plant. So why do we call this an externality? Because here there are two players. There is the power plant manager who produces the electricity, that sells it to the clients. So they exchange this service for money that the clients pay, but they don't account for everybody else that lives around the firm, or even all the humanity will live with the CO2 that's being expelled by the chimneys there. So so this is not taken into account. So what we see is markets are thus inefficient because so the private benefits for the firm and their clients do not equal the public benefits, which are the private benefits plus all the extra effects that come from the generation of this economic activity. So here is an illustration of what's going on. So let me zoom because this is unreadable. So this is an example of a negative externality.
Sir, I don't really understand what is an externality.
Yeah, so okay, so let me go back here. A good definition, well, I don't have a perfect definition at the top of my head, but externality. See, it's positive or negative consequence of some economic activity felt by a third party which is not taken into account by the market. So by the ones trying. So example of negative externality. Pollution. So if there's a river and then there's a firm that just discharges pollution in the river, and downstream there are people who swim there, then there might be a summer camp, for instance, then the negative consequence to these people downstream are not taken into account by the firm who produces the whatever they're producing. So it means that the result of this is that the market is not going to be efficient. But I could have a positive externality as well.
But that's the thing that I don't understand. Why does it make a market failure? Like, it's a side effect, but like, why wouldn't it be efficient?
Okay, so we're perfectly going to see that the next slide. So positive externality,
Okay.
a classic example of that is, honey producer or a beekeeper doesn't account for the fact that bees help pollinate fields of a local farmer. This is a bit smaller. Yeah. So too much production, and here it's what the result is. It's too little production. So here, since the honey producer only cares about his or her own profit, then that's the only thing that matters for them in their decision of how much honey to produce. But they don't think that, oh, having bees is useful for local farmers. Pollinate. I don't know if pollinate I wrote it correctly or not. Oh, yeah, I wrote it correctly. So they don't take into account the fact that this helps a local farmer. And if they did take it into account, then they would say, oh, we should produce even more than we were producing because that's helpful for the farmer. So again, that's a situation in which there's some external effect that's not accounted by the people who take the economic decisions. So here, the honey producers, and it leads to an inefficient situation. Really the marginal benefit of having an extra beehive is not just the honey it's going to produce, but it's the honey it's going to produce plus the better fields. So you see that the marginal benefit is above the marginal cost, which is the cost of the beehive. But if you only think, oh, I want to have a situation in which the marginal benefit in terms of honey is equal to the marginal cost of this extra beehive, then that's what the decision you take. But the real cost, the real or benefit in that case, the real social benefit is the honey plus the better fields. So you see there's this disconnect. So we're going to see exactly what does that look like. Yeah, okay, so C here is, what does that C tends? Oh, competitive, all right. So first, don't look at the orange line there, just look at the blue and red line. So imagine that's the only thing that you see. So what is the blue line? This is the private benefit curve. So it's the demand curve. So it's whatever economic activity, and this is the marginal willingness to pay or to buy or to, yeah, the marginal benefit that the people get from consuming this good. And how much does it cost to produce the good? Well, it's the red line, the marginal cost curve. And so if you let this economic activity go on, so this, it could be like I was talking about in the case in which I produce and I just dump my waste in the river, then I would produce this quantity there, QC, and sell it at this price, PC. And the two people who take part in this transaction, the consumers and the producers there, then they think that's the only thing that we have to care about. And it's perfectly efficient because the marginal benefit equals the marginal cost at the quantity QC, which is equal to the price. Now, what is the problem? The problem is, imagine that you haven't taken into account the fact that dumping your waste in the river costs or adversely affect other people downstream, for instance. So in that case, imagine that for every unit of production that you produce, there is this private cost to you as a firm, but there is this external cost to the people downstream. So then the total social cost, so marginal cost, S is marginal cost social, is the sum of the private marginal cost and this externality. So here there's the social cost is higher. You can imagine that the benefit, there is no externality in terms of benefit, so that the marginal benefit for private people is the same as the marginal benefit for the social people, for the society in general. And then, so what would be the optimal decision? The optimal production decision would be social marginal cost equals social marginal benefit. So here would be the optimal decision. So Q star would be the optimal decision, the optimal social decision. And the actual cost would be high. It would be, I could add this. So it could be something like PS here. Whoa, that's large. Yeah. PS would be the social price. And what this would reflect, it would reflect the fact that the marginal benefit that the last person gets by buying this unit, by buying this good, is has to be equal to the private cost it costs to produce it plus the social cost it incurred. So imagine that I'm buying the product from this this firm. Then I'm taking into account the fact that not only there is a cost to producing it, but also there is this extra impact on society. So an example of this. So if you buy plane tickets, nowadays you get this environmental contribution. Let me back up a bit. Right. So what are they doing there? Why do you have to pay this? Well, you have to pay this to imagine, oh, I would have maybe consumed here. I would have went to a trip often and paid a low price. But now I know that there is this extra environmental cost that I have to pay for my trip. So maybe I'm going to take this into account and go to on a trip a bit less often than I would have before. And the price I'm going to pay is actually a higher price because it has this environmental contribution plus the private cost of running the plane.
Sir, does that environmental contribution, does it go to the seller, or does it go to like somewhere else to help the community?
Oh, I have no clue. So, I mean, so in the case of planes, where when you buy it online and they say there's this environmental contribution, it happened with my TV too. I just bought a TV and they say, oh yeah, there's this extra tax that you have to pay. I don't know where it goes. If it goes to the government, yeah, I should know actually, but yeah, it's very recent that they introduced this. But so what you should do, so yeah, solution for this more broadly. Solutions to externalities. Include, are often Pigouvian text. Pigou was a famous economist that contributed to this topic. And what is a Pigouvian tax? It's just a tax, but a tax that you impose not because you want to raise money, just because you want to limit some adverse economic activity. So what you would have to do is charge a tax that is exactly equal to the distance between the orange line and the red line. And then if you do that, the economic agents are perfectly going to take this into account. So what we say is, if you do, so the economic internalize the externality. So what do we mean by internalize the externality? We mean that they take it into account in their economic decision. So in a sense, in this example, the result is that they don't choose to consume QC. They chose to compute Q star because they know they have to pay this extra fee for their consumption. All right. And last thing I could add is, if we don't take this into account, if we produce QC like nothing happens, then what you see is the marginal benefit from the last unit consumed is actually lower than the marginal cost, the marginal social cost to produce it. And you can measure the deadweight loss from this, and the deadweight loss would be this thing. If externality taken. All right. So is that clearer for externality? If you want to know more about this, then take my class next year. I'm teaching environmental economics. All right, so that's a negative externality, but we can see a positive externality as well. So here is a positive externality. And in that case, the competitive free market produces too little of the good. So what's happening there? So it's the same graph as before. except that before we had an extra cost. Now we don't have an extra cost, we have an extra benefit. So it's like the story of the beekeeper. So the benefit, the private benefit of this is for just the people who buy the honey. But there is also this other benefit that goes to the farmer who has his fields pollinated by the bees. So the total social benefit is actually higher than the private benefit of the people who buy the honey. So the real benefit or the real price that could be going to the beekeeper shouldn't be that low, it should be higher. And in that case, the market should produce that much. And in that case, so this would be the optimal quantity Q star, where the marginal social benefit equals the marginal social cost. Here, we don't assume there's an extra cost. There's an extra cost going on. And in that case, where if we are here, where is the deadweight loss? To the right or the left?
Right.
Yes. So again, if we are here, we just have to look what is the marginal cost? It's here. What is the marginal benefit? It's here. So there is this gap between the marginal cost and the marginal benefit that will exist until we get here.
But you said the price remains the same.
I said that. Well, what I'm saying is, so yeah, if the beekeeper could sell its honey such that the price incorporates the benefit for the ones who buy the honey and the farmers, then the price would actually be higher. The real price would be, say, here. At
Okay,
Q
okay.
star, we would have a P star. Yeah, let me put the P star to keep it with the Q star, P star. And star again. Here, I just changed to P star to make it confirm with the Q star. Then again, this deadweight loss, if positive externality not taken into account. All right, so we have 5 minutes. So I'm going to talk a bit about public goods. So externalities are a sort of feature that of economic activity that lead to inefficiency. But there's another way of looking at things which look more or less the same, which are public goods. So what are public goods? Well, there are goods that don't benefit to a single individual. And this also creates all sorts of problems. So for markets to lead to efficient outcome, it must be the case that if I go out and buy a sandwich, then I buy it for myself. I have to pay money for it. I cannot just steal it. I cannot get it for free. And then once I consume it, then it's gone forever. But many goods are not like that. many goods are what we call public goods, because in a way they can be shared with a lot of people, and this makes things much more complicated. So we usually have two ways of classifying goods. So rivalability and excludability. VC. Okay, they don't, so let me just say real quick. So rival good, it's a good. A good that if consumed is unavailable for other people. So that's the sort of good that we imagine. So example, a sandwich. Is that how I write a sandwich? Yeah. And a non-rival good is a good that yeah. Non-rival. So maybe consumed by many people. And we're going to see a lot of examples of that. Excludable is, it is easy.
Do you have an example of a non-rival good?
Yeah, well, we'll have a lot, but I can give you one. So example. Light, a song, an invention, security. So all of these things, if there's light and I enjoy sunshine, then it doesn't prevent my neighbor from enjoying sunshine as well. Or an invention or any public, or any intellectual production, once it's there, then, so if it's a song, for instance, if I play it on my computer, it doesn't make it disappear for other people, so everybody can use it, for instance. Security is what we were talking about before. So if the street is safe for me, then it generally means that it's safe for my neighbor as well. And excludable means is easy to prevent people who don't pay for the good from using it. This example, a car. So if you don't have a key, then you cannot hop in somebody else's car. Then and non-excludable. So somebody has an example of that?
Could you repeat the question, please?
So example of non-excludable. So an extrudable good is a good that for which it's easy to prevent people who don't pay for it from using it. So a non-excludable good, what would that be?
A pen.
A pen? Well, I mean,
Well, anyone
if
would
I
be able
can,
to use it, no?
yeah, but the thing is, if it's your pen and I respect your personal bubble, then I'm not going to just grab the pen from you. Yeah, the metro. No, the metro. Yeah, okay. The Montreal Metro.
What about the internet?
Well, if I don't pay for my internet provider, then it's just going to stop providing internet. So that would be so parks, yes. Or I could add the pirated music. Or light again, sunshine.
Movie?
Yeah, but yeah, okay. So that's if it's person, music, or movies. So music and movies used to be, or video games used to be excludable because it was difficult back then to create to just copy a disc, for instance, if it was a very old, back in the 70s maybe, and then cassettes made it a bit easier, then CDs made it a bit easier, and now with the file sharing on the internet, it's almost become like a non-excludable good. And this causes problems. So the music industry had to change completely. It used to be that the main income source for a singer would be to just make an album and sell it, and everybody would buy it. But now it's made things much more complicated. Now you have to basically go on tour, and so singers just make a single and they have to basically give it for free on the internet, because they know that it's very hard to force people to buy it. All right, so we're out of time and we're going to continue here next time. So any question, any next question? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question, but it's about chapter 10.
Okay, so yeah, I'll stick around after the class. Other questions? All right, so have a nice day. Good luck with the midterm number 2. And yeah, see you. And I'll just start the stream again in a few seconds.